Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. So, AJ is taking a vacation and asked me to stop. Oh, please. So I'll be subbing today as president for him right off the bat. So let's go around and do we have any guests or visiting Rotarians that start out? Table 1 here.
We have again with us Sean here.
AJ's guest.
Oh yeah, AJ not in here.
I'm back by popular demand, Amanda Nelson.
And I brought my husband, Brent.
Who's watching the kids?
Nobody's
Nobody's watching the
watching
kids.
themselves.
Oh God, I better go back and check my house.
And going around, we have Jessica McCordy, is that what you said last name? Katie McCordy, sorry, and
Oh, Kim Barradell from Rotary International.
So announcements. So I'll have a first number. So that number there, we learned last time. That's AJ's number. So we need to make sure that he stays in good presidential form. We can't have 1 week off, and if they can get up a little bit early. So only all take 30 seconds and text AJ good morning. And let him know president, you can't really go left and right. You gotta roll your phone. There you go. Get the selfies going. So while the question, does anyone have any general announcements they'd like to make for things coming up? Something you want to include in on? There it is. That's a good one. All right, moving on. So, Rotary Park. We have an event coming up on July 21st from 2 to 3. Cleanup and fellowship event. Jessica,
Yes.
you want to say anything more about that?
Yes. Let's see. Is there anyone from community service who wants to speak first? Okay. So on Sunday we have a work party at Rotary Park. The city has asked us to come and help with spreading some chips and doing some light weeding. We think that it probably won't take too long, maybe an hour, hour and a half or so, to be able to do the work part of this. And then the community service committee sort of teamed up with fellowship to be able to say, could we turn this into a little fellowship event afterwards? So if you come and work at Rotary Park, there'll be snacks following. Vanessa and I are working on some nice yummy snacks to be able to share with all of you. Would suggest that you bring a beverage that you prefer. I'll have a cooler there to put it in at the top of the work party to be able to keep things cool. So hope you all can come and join us. Rotary Park is between South F and South G, down sort of across from the old Arcade School of Massage, or where there's a dog store down on G Street. You sort of go back behind the little building, or it's on F is the actual street address. So it's a sweet little park that we did a renovation, or that the city did a major renovation to about 4 years ago, and we just need to do a little freshening up. So
What time?
noon.
Noon.
That's not actually just for me, but is it an adult beverage event or not?
It says right there on the sign.
Well, here's the thing. Vanessa lives not too far from Rotary Park. So we thought that we would be between Vanessa's house and Rotary Park. How's that?
Okay.
Okay.
And leave your roller skates at home.
Just say no roller skates.
Just no roller.
Roller skater, skateboarder.
No roller skates. This is all really complicated.
Why don't you say we're Colombians?
So anyway, that's gonna be a fun time. Then our next board meeting is gonna be July 23rd, 7 a.m. at Umpqua Bank. So anyone interested in seeing how the board runs, or you want to kind of get behind the scenes a little bit, or maybe you want to be a director one day, come and join the fun at 7 a.m. at Umpqua. Drink some coffee and talk about the budget. So. This is one of AJ's things called Makeup Monday. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but what we're going to do on August 19th, the Griffin is going to open especially for us from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and it will count as a makeup meeting, and it's essentially just a
No,
social.
4 to 6.
4 to 6.
Yeah.
4 to 6.
4 to 6,
Okay.
early. Come in, see your friends, move along with your evening. Yeah.
On
That's what
Monday.
it is. Yeah, see your friends, move along with the evening, Makeup Monday. It does count as a makeup meeting, so we'll be there short and sweet, but it's especially open for us to be there, so it'll be a fun time.
Is it a monthly thing?
What's
Yes,
that?
so it'll be the third Monday of the month, starting August 19th. So that will be the first one. Third Monday, Vanessa's opening up specifically for Makeup Monday, and all Rotary clubs are invited. So I know that AJ's working to put that invitation out to the Redwood region folks so that we can also invite other clubs to join us.
And Rotaract.
Rotaract?
We
Yes.
gotta get them to come.
Yes.
Thank you, that's good.
Uh-huh.
So, I'm going to actually bring up Katie and Jesse again, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about Surf Riders Black and White Ocean. So,
Finish my waffle.
did I catch it the perfect time?
Okay, here's me. My first experience with Rotary.
Oh,
I
that was
went
a
from
great.
Ukiah to Brussels when I was a junior in high school, and it was great. So it's fun to be back here presenting to Rotary as a grown-up. So I'm going to start with Jesse.
I didn't even know that about Katie, but I was in Interact when I was young too.
Oh, nice.
So I'm the chair of the Surf Rider Foundation, our Humboldt chapter here locally. I just took over that position this year, but I've been working with the Surf Rider Foundation for many years in different positions. And basically what we do, I think there's sort of some misconception that it's a surf club, and it's very much not. It's an environmental nonprofit organization, and we do a lot of work to try to preserve our oceans and beaches. So we do some policy work at the national level, and we help with that. Locally we help with that, but then we do a lot of local work as well. So things like beach cleanups, and a lot of outreach and education. So things like going into schools and teaching about single-use plastics and the impact on the environment. And then part of our outreach is what we're here to talk about today, which is Black and White Ocean Night, and that's our biggest fundraiser of the year and our biggest outreach event, where we invite members of the community to the Arcade Theater Lounge. And part of it's just a party, and we do our year review and show the community what we've been up to and what we've accomplished in our local community. And then it's also a membership drive, so it's really trying to get people to get more involved. It's kind of fascinating actually how many local organizations could and should be involved, but they're not. One of our campaigns right now is ocean-friendly restaurants. And locally, we have a bunch of restaurants that are already quote-unquote ocean-friendly because they're not using a bunch of single-use plastics. They've already gotten rid of their plastic straws and things like that. But they're not registered, so they're not being recognized for it. We actually, in Humboldt County, if you can believe it, we've just brought on only our 4th ocean-friendly restaurant, even though lots of people care about this issue here. So it's a chance for us to get more organizations involved and get more people involved. It's our biggest membership drive, getting individuals involved as well. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Katie because part of it, I should rewind a little bit, we do a monthly ocean night where it's just an education and outreach film night at Arcade Theater Lounge. Black and White Ocean Night is our end of the year, big, fancy, sort of a ball version of it. And Katie is an amazing pianist, and so she
beloved president, AJ Gonzalez, bought a baby grand piano for me to play at RCAS in Umpqua Bank. So I play there a few times a year, and I have my students recital there. And it's during RCAS. So for them, it's great. AJ loves it. So I always tell him, I asked him, I was like, AJ, does Rotary know that you bought a piano for me? Or like, no. He said, no, it's a secret. So his secret's out now. And I'd like to invite you guys to come and see piano at Umpqua Bank. But then the other great thing that AJ does is he lends us the pianos and we just wheel it across the street for Black and White Ocean Night. So this was our first one, and it's basically just me playing piano to black and white images of surfing in the ocean. It's very nice. It's following the trend of pianos kind of taking over different venues, bringing piano music back. So that's it. That's all we have.
Questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, good time. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, 2 questions. The date?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Jesse.
So the date actually has not been set. I don't know, some of you may have heard that Arcade Theater Lounge just sold to new owners, and so we're holding off on setting the date until we get the new schedule organized with the new owners that are taking over.
And my second question is, do you play like big band music?
Yes.
Surf music?
I play contemporary music too. Of course. Not just classical.
I mean, compared to.
Details.
Wrong.
So something else that I'll mention that I should have said already is that everything that we do is all volunteer-based. I have a day job, I teach at HSU. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort from the community to put this together and do the work that we do. And yeah, it's all volunteer-based as you know from what you're doing, that it takes a lot to make things happen.
So we have regular Black and White Ocean Night committee meetings, right, for the event itself. So there's a special group that meets and plans. And so if anybody wants to be involved, let us know. Also, the other thing AJ wanted me to ask was that the piano at Umpqua Bank, it doesn't have a cover for it. And he said there's a few quilters in the group. So I was hoping to connect with the quilters.
Just the one.
We don't know
I would love to speak with the quilter if you're available. AJ volunteered you, but if it's really something that you knew about.
It's too late, they've already been volunteered. If the piano needed painting, Bob, you could do that.
So you want me to put his number back up on there? Anything else you guys want to add?
I think that's it.
Are there any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I went to Ocean Night a few nights, and you guys play some great surf builds and stuff, and it's a good atmosphere, so that's fun to check out too if you guys ever are arcade at the AT on one.
Yeah, every
So,
month. The next one is August 8th
August
at
8th.
6:30.
I'll be there. Okay, recognitions. Let's see, actually, I just found out one recognition I want to bring up to you, and I also want to welcome her back to the club. I don't know if she was first week. Shannon Maciel, welcome back. So why don't you tell them what you were telling me down there when we were getting coffee, because that's pretty exciting.
So I made the move from Redwood Capital to Compass Credit Union back in February, and I went there as the branch manager to help get their Henderson Center branch open. And as soon as I got it open, they reached out to me and asked me to be their VP of member experience. So I am now in charge of all operations of the credit union and overseeing the branches and helping implement and create culture for them. So I'm super excited about the opportunity, and it's kind of my dream job of what I've always wanted to do after 25 years in banking. So I'm super pumped, but I'm more excited to be back with you guys. We got 2 branches open in like 2 months, so it was insane. And but I'm super pumped to be back and about my new job, and looking forward to getting back into the thick things here with you guys. Thank you.
So let's see, I don't see either of the musicians here this morning. The only one in the picture is Sophie. So you want to tell us a little bit about Fabulous in Fieldbrook last Sunday?
I can't tell you guys too much.
It's a secret.
And I told Melinda, her
Carries. Any other general recognitions anyone wants to let loose? Okey doke. Moving on, Howard Stauffer went on a pretty epic trip here, so I'm going to have him come up and he's going to show some pictures and let us know a little bit about his experience.
Probably wondered where I was this spring when I was away for 2 months. Well,
We didn't notice, Howard.
where did that come from?
Your friend, that was your friend.
So, well, the initial idea was to go to Egypt. But, back in 1974, I got a Fulbright grant to teach in Malaysia. And on the way back, I could stop wherever I wanted as long as I was continuing to head west. So I stopped in Istanbul for 2 days, in Cairo for 2 days, and at that time, remember Egypt had just recovering from 2 wars with Israel, and people seemed depressed. Both places actually seemed very medieval, very large. There were only men out in the streets. So I was curious to go back and see how things have changed, if things have really changed. So I took off and first went to Turkey, to Istanbul, which turned out I really enjoyed the Turks and being down the center of Istanbul, the old quarters, where Hagia Sophia, their famous mosque, is. And that was built around 500 AD, to get an idea how old it is. It was originally a Christian church, but then became a mosque when the Ottoman Empire took over Turkey. And it's really impossible with my smartphone to take a decent photo of the interior, but it's one of the largest dome structures in the world. It's really very extraordinary. It's now a museum, tourists can visit. And while in Istanbul, I did go to the market, which is famous for goods that you can buy, any sort. And while in Turkey, I went off to the coast to Ephesus, where there are Roman ruins. You probably know along the Turkish coast there are a lot of Roman ruins. And also, see there's some of the remains. And your friendly Roman ruins cat.
Better have a picture of a dog.
And then I went to Cappadocia, which is famous for having a city of houses that are underground, in caves, and various structures there. Very interesting. Then on to Egypt, to Cairo, and of course to see the Great Pyramids. It turns out they were actually built by the earliest pharaohs, not the late pharaohs. So these date back to about 2800 BC, you can imagine. And the scale of them is just hard to imagine just how enormous they are, these pyramids. And this gives you an idea. Can you see the people there at the base of the pyramid to get an idea of just how enormous they are? I did not go inside because the best interiors are actually found in smaller pyramids. And some of those, there's the Sphinx. It turns out my guide, I had actually taken a course before I left on ancient Egypt. And my professor was a character from Brooklyn with a working class accent. He's a world's expert on mummies and on Egyptology. And his name is Bill Breyer. And in Egypt, I had a guy, Tayyip. It turned out Tayyip was a good personal friend.
Of course he was.
Right. Quite amazing. And I had very good guides there who knew a tremendous amount. This is up the Nile at Karnak, where there are enormous temples. These date back more to about 1200 to 1400 BC. They're actually built by later kingdom pharaohs, including Ramses III, who was perhaps their most famous, most powerful pharaoh, lived around 1200 BC. I was surprised, I'd say, way under expected what I'd see remained of the walls. That the walls and the ceilings, outside and inside, were actually covered with hieroglyphics and with relief sculpture. And it was all painted bright colors, so the colors have all faded in time, and a lot of the hieroglyphics and sculptures have also faded, but that was perhaps my most amazing surprise.
Were there colors inside?
Inside the ceilings and the walls, and you'll see I have one photo that shows that, and of course there was the Egyptian cat. These monuments, he was meditating and
He's using a phone in
that takes it to him, and that too is up the Nile, across the Nile from where Karnak was. And this pharaoh was actually a female, Hatshepsut, and visited her. And also the Valley of the Kings, where Tutankhamun's tomb is. That was being renovated, and didn't get a chance to go in there, but I got a chance to go in some others. But that is the entrance to Tutankhamun's tomb. Bob, this gives you an idea of what the interiors were like in both the monuments, the temples, and the tombs underground. And then finally, way up above the Aswan Dam is Abu Simbel, which no doubt you're familiar with. And this structure was actually raised in elevation because the Aswan Dam covered the original site. So they moved the entire sculpture and the interior. There are rooms inside the cliff there. All of that was carefully moved up in elevations at the same site, but you're still able to visit it all and see it. This also is built by Ramses III, so that's around 1200 BC. Then I headed over to Italy to join up with Jim Stevenson, who lives in West Haven. And he and I have bicycled before in Europe and other places. And this time we were bicycling in Italy. So I flew to Milan, briefly visited the city, that's the Gothic cathedral that Milan is famous for. I stopped by Florence.
Okay.
That's my Airbnb. Overlooking the Duomo in Florence, and briefly went to a few museums here. Michelangelo's David, and also the Academy has the slave sculptures. Tremendous to see. It is getting very crowded in Florence with tourists, so you want to buy tickets ahead of time to see these places. And there's Michelangelo's library. Truly amazing, just totally amazing. And then flew up, I took the train up to Innsbruck to meet Jim, and we bicycled from Innsbruck down to Verona and then over to Venice. And it's a downhill ride all the way. It was age appropriate. And started up in the Alps in Innsbruck and we bicycled down to Verona. And it's one of the most amazing bicycle rides you can take. It's all bike paths, no riding on roads and highways. You can see, and you go down through this canyon, and you're sharing this narrow canyon with freeways, you see over there on the left, with trains and with the roaring, raging river, and the bike paths, all going crowded together and sometimes above each other. And you can see the bike paths going underneath the highway there. Just a gorgeous ride. And you even have your own tunnels for bicycle paths. They're very bike friendly in most countries in Europe. And continuing down here, that's Jim. And then getting down. The elevation started to rain a lot, so we had the exciting experience of bicycling all day in the rain. But it was drizzling and it was really, we were prepared for it. Then you may wonder where my wife was during all this time. She was taking a trek in northern England while we were bicycling. And so my wife and I met, where else but in Paris. And we had this Airbnb in that building just to the right with restaurants down the street. There were about 10 different ethnic restaurants. In the distance there, you see the beginning of Luxembourg Park. And the Sorbonne is about half a block away. So we were just an amazing location on the right bank there. And there's the Sorbonne. There's Luxembourg Park. And of course you have to spend your time in cafes, watching people in the street, and then all the amazing restaurants, little holes in the wall, really good escargot, snails, garlic butter, and you could put anything in garlic butter. French onion soup, frog's legs, all sorts of great foods that you never dreamed would be delicious. And this is the dining room in the museum, Musée d'Orsay. It's a very elegant dining room. And you feel like the king and queen in there. And gourmet food that they offer as dessert. I had to break my diabetic diet for that. It's one of the restaurants we ate at. It's so wonderful. There's about room for at most 20 people in this restaurant. They pride themselves in good food. And there's a Renoir, Musée d'Orsay. Another artist I love, Seurat. Great musical about that. Sunday Park with George in New York, if you ever get a chance to see it. Some kind of musical. That's where Sartre and the existentialists hung out, along with Hemingway and various other artists and writers. Pound hung out there. It still exists. Finally, we went to London to end the trip. There's Parliament across the river and the parks of London. We got a lot of rain by that time. Didn't matter, still wonderful walk, parks. The Tate Museum, marvelous paintings. Good music. We heard a Bach cantata in one of the churches one. They just taught, just performed by a local group. Just performed a Bach cantata. Did a good job of it. And finally, we went up to, why am I not thinking of it? It's a place, Greenwich, where the time begins for our planet. And walked up the hill to the observatory there and conclude our trip. So enjoyed sharing this experience that I had. It's an amazing retirement kind of vacation.
That's totally awesome.
Howard, enough of this. Tell us about Jazz Camp.
I did go to jazz camp.
I know.
Yes, I have work to do, Bob. No, it was truly amazing.
And where was it again?
It's Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie Abersol, who's famous in jazz world. Because, he's a proponent of jazz for everybody. Everybody can learn to improvise, even me. So, yeah, so it was fun, and I did get to perform in Congo, of course. That was a great experience. Thanks for that.
That's cool.
So, I'm sorry, I'll go ahead and go there. So when you ride from Innsbruck to Paris, you end up with Sorbonne?
All right, so Andreas and Maggie, we have a presentation. They went to RI Convention in Hamburg, and so is it just you going to present? No. All right, come on up, and I'll load your PDF and tell us all about the RI Convention.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. You were in for a blitz of a presentation because we have way too many slides for our time slot. But there's no speaker after us, so we can take our time.
We have what?
All right.
We don't have the whole time. We have John's.
No. Take that much time.
All right. Well, we won't delay too much, but. All right. So Maggie and I went to the Rotary International Convention in Hamburg, so we're going to give you a little overview of that. Thought I'd start with just a little bit about Hamburg itself. Hamburg is the second largest port city in Germany. It's at the confluence of two rivers, so it's an inland port, and so there's water everywhere. And so there's the city in the background of the port.
Did you surf?
Did I surf? Not in the river.
There is river surfing at all.
So,
Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing.
Port, and
Big boats.
there's the famous, they just built this brand new famous opera house there in the background. And, anyway, big ships all over the place. And the thing to do is to take a harbor tour. So both Maggie and I had the same idea, but at different times and different places. So we both took a harbor tour, and that's my cousin right there. And then, so there's some scenes. So here's City Hall. A little bit different than City Halls here, but very nice. And they have some very colorful painted churches. And of course, Hamburg is kind of where the Beatles got their start. So
Yeah, I took a Beatles tour. It was a pick in the red light district.
They have great public transportation. This is what a train station looks like in Germany. And that's my sister. We have a little family meeting there. Anyway, all right. And so just some daily life when it's sunny out, because it's often not. I like to go have a lunch outside near the water. And their local food that they eat a lot is currywurst, sausage, which is very picture. And then this is one of their farmers markets, and they do it under their light rail system, so they do it all year round, and it's kind of cool. It's a 1.5 miles long. So, Maggie?
Oh, yeah. When I was 15, I lived in Germany as an exchange student, and this was my first real crush back then when he was a little older, and so I got to see him there, and we both look exactly like we did in high school. He looks a lot older. But he
came over from Kiel, it was where I lived. He came down on a Sunday and we wandered, and everywhere we went, you know, there were people walking around with this on and carrying bags. And he's like, you guys, yeah, there's a lot of people. There were like 27,000 of us there. So everywhere you went, there were people walking around with these things on. But it was nice to see him again and catch up. And, yeah, that's one of the perks of being an exchange student is if you stay in touch with your families and friends, you know, 40 plus years later, 40 something.
And of course, they have beer.
That's one of his friends from back then.
Yeah, it looks like it's two of them.
Yeah, two of his
Now
friends.
So to the conference a little bit then. So the conference starts, kind of the way the day goes is in the morning you have a general session. And this is a picture of the general session. The general session, they're trying to fit, there were 27,000 conference attendees. That's 2% of the Rotary membership is there. So it's a big room, and you know they need big screens because people are paying into this.
You're like, you can't even see the stage. It's like the person who is back there. I mean, you can't even see him.
There's actually a whole set of flags right in the center of the picture, and that's where the stage was, which you can see the flags. It was, they did, actually, the general speakers were really good. They were all pretty polished, and Rotary did a really good job of telling compelling stories, and they kind of mixed sort of emotional and, you know, information and other things all together in their presentations. How they had it set up. I thought the general sessions were and then you break for lunch, and lunch was a great time to go meet other Rotarians from around the world. And so I made it a habit of just finding somebody new and just sitting down and saying hello and how are you and having a conversation. And it was just, this was one of the best things about the conference for me, is you're surrounded with 27,000 people who all share a sense of service above self. You all have something in common. You're all there for the same reason. You all can identify with each other, no matter where you come from in the world, no matter what you look like, anything. And it was so great.
Yeah, I was kind of like thinking, okay, 27,000 people, that is like the size of Eureka population. And I just can't imagine spending 3 days in this area, walking around with all the people that live in Eureka. I mean, it was just like, but it was, because of that commonality, it was like more fun than that would have been. But it was really amazing. I mean, everybody walking around with their name, you know, they gave us these bags and all this stuff I have over here to look at it. And it's true, you think about these people are all here because they want to be. And if that was what they...
the population.
Kind of like Eureka.
Yeah, exactly, that was what I was thinking. And so
Sentence.
it was really kind of motivating to see that. And also, the opening sessions, they stayed on theme, so they had a, you know, when they talk about leadership and when they talk about service and fellowship, so they kind of stayed on some of the major themes, and so the speakers were kind of in those directions. And you just, and the other thing I would say is, it's like you said, the most important thing is meeting the people, because they give you a booklet of all the different things you can go to, and you start looking at this, you go, okay, I'll go to that, and that, oh wait, those crossover, can't do that, okay. And then I was like, shiny object. You know, I'd have this all planned out, what I was going to do, and oh wait, look at those people, you know, and a lot of my time was spent not necessarily being where I thought I would be in the book, but always being somewhere that I can meet somebody and have a conversation. So if you go to, I would say if you go to these, you learn that you can't do everything, and you can't even necessarily get what you want, but you find some time. You just might find that you get what you need, right? And that was really exciting to just kind of let go of it and say, okay, wherever I'm going to be, it's going to be the right place. And you meet some great people that way. So when you go to Hawaii this next year, think about it that way, because it's a zoo. I mean, it's really really a zoo, and
It's
it's a fun zoo. There's no animals in cages, but it's a zoo.
So then after lunch, they break into workshops, you know, had a bunch of concurrent sessions and kind of pick and choose where you want to go. And you'll see some pictures of that later. So these are a couple of the guys that we met. This was at the district reception, and they were Rotaractors from the Bahamas. And they were pretty interesting. The guy on the right started the Rotaract Club like a couple of years ago. So just an example of meeting people. And then, so they also have what's called the House of Friendship, and it's their vendor booth. And they actually had 2 halls. There's 2 of these.
I didn't even know about the second one until the last day. That's how shiny object I was. I was like, oh, what's that?
And so this is actually one of the great things about it too, because it's not just all the sessions and presentations, but here, I mean, they have every kind of, obviously they have people that are selling Rotary paraphernalia, you know, jackets and pins and that kind of stuff, or jewelry. But that's actually a small percentage of the booths. And most of the booths are, you know, they've got fellowship groups or, you know, different action groups or, you know, Rotarians with specific missions that they're trying to get out there, or, you know, get people interested in, or there was authors with some books, and just a really wide variety of booths that you could go talk to somebody about something really cool, and you just kind of cruise this hall and get inspired with new ideas. So the House of Friendship is pretty neat. And then they also had entertainment too, which was fun. All right, Maggie?
Yeah, so this is what, you know, when people ask, you know, what's Rotary, you know, and what do you say? This is the elevator speech, in a way. This is what they were really promoting as what our vision statement is, you know, that we are basically people of action. And we want to create lasting change, not only, you know, across the world in our communities, but also in ourselves. So that's kind of, that was what they were putting out. It really felt, rather than talking about, you know, they're really talking about it in a way that makes sense to people who don't understand what Rotary is. And rather than saying, well, we're a bunch of people in businesses and like we hang out and we do projects, it's like this is kind of cleaned up version. And
rather than the 1.2 million.
Yeah. And they also, they struck this partnership with Toastmasters to realizing that Toastmasters are a bunch of people that get together, learn how to learn leadership skills, learn how to talk in public, learn how to do all these different things, but they don't have a place to do it. And here we are, a Rotary, where we do great stuff and could use people who have that training. So they're really rolling it out now, the partnership to focus on Rotaract and create training for people, for Rotaractors to learn those leadership skills. And it made me think that we should be going to the local Toastmasters groups, and there's a few around, I think, and invite them to join us because they're people who are interested in their careers and in being out there. And so giving them something to do, I think that was kind of that mixing it up.
And they were saying, I mean, they were thinking that the focus was a little bit more on Rotaract, but it's for anybody and everybody. And it's not just the public speaking part. Apparently, they were also saying that some of the skills that they teach in terms of the leadership is how do you pitch a project, how do you organize it, how do you go out and get grant funding, that kind of stuff. So project development kind of skills as well.
Right, and so these are the priorities that they're looking at in terms of the next years and encouraging us to look at that, increasing our impact, expanding our reach, getting more engagement and adapting. There was a lot of talk about what, and I think Andreas is going to do a different presentation later on about how to really look at your club critically and how to improve on what you do and not just assume everything's, you know, hunky-dory, but look at your skills in terms of membership, involvement, engagement, retention, finding people, and just not assuming that everything you've been doing your whole life in Rotary is what it should be, that we always have to like question, You know, just because it works, is it still working? You know, does it still work for people, younger people, different people coming in, so. Yeah. And there was a lot of Rotaractors there. They were really, President Barry, or now he's our past president, but he's a big Rotaractor supporter, and there was a lot of Rotaractors there. I think we should work, Honolulu should be easier, but we should really work hard to see if we can get some of our Rotaractors, support them in going to the convention. I also went to a workshop talking about how to get your stories into the Rotaract magazine, and I can share some of that, but and then they talked about some of the people of action kind of tools, and I think we have some more slides on that. And then all the different groups that he mentioned, the action groups, the fellowship groups. They had a lot of workshops on polio, where we're at with polio, and that we're, you know, we've been saying we're this close for a long time, and we really are, but we need to, they were like at that time, about $5 million short of the goal they needed to get the match, the 2-for-1 match from the Gates Foundation. So there were workshops talking about that, and what they're seeing is some complacency in some countries that don't have polio. Like in Brazil, they found that they were reducing the vaccination rate because people were kind of like, oh, we don't have polio anymore. And so that it's important now to not be complacent, to continue to push and continue to vaccinate. So those are some of the things they had there.
So they had a lot on sort of the people of action and branding, and there's actually a bunch of tools on the Rotary International website associated with this and talks. So this is just a picture of one of the slides, one of the presentations I went to. Just a couple of quick things that you can do to try to get your story out there. Again, it's not take a picture and post it, it's trying to tell an engaging story. That's really what all of these tools are trying to help you get across, is to present your story in a way that's compelling. So, you know, these are things that we know in terms of posts to social media and that kind of stuff, but there are, in the website, there's some talk about updating our website here. This is something that's really easy to do. They have, if you take a picture, they're encouraging you that anytime you're doing anything, to snap an unposed action picture of people actually doing stuff that they don't actually realize they're being photographed. And because those are more than posed pictures. And then you can take that picture, go to their website. They have tools that basically overlay their branding image on there about people of action. You can pick different sort of action verbs, and then it's all kind of branded, and then you can post it. Post it to social media, you can post it to our website down the line. And it only takes a couple minutes to do this. And so, so that's a great tool. And to try to kick this off on Sunday, we're putting a challenge out there for everybody to bring their cell phones and take some pictures and use this tool. And we haven't figured out how we're going to judge or anything, but whoever has the best one, we're going to give away 5 free raffle tickets. Okay? So come on Sunday, bring your phone, take some pictures, and try out this new tool. All right.
So I can talk more about this because I know we're going to run out of time, but they plan 6 months out for Rotary Magazine, so they don't, they don't want photos of big checks. It works for local papers, but they don't want stuff like that. They don't want, it's got to have a why to it. It's got to be unique and provocative, and unusual. So they want something over above the norm. And I was thinking when we talked about stories to get in, it's like, I told a lot of people about our Final Fridays in terms of how to raise money for the foundation. And people were like, whoa, that's a great idea. And that's a great story because the history of how we started that and the idea that a certain member came up with to do that and how we've been carrying that through. That would be a good little story to have in there, and it would help other clubs. So that's something we could submit, and it might it might be put in there as a, you know, and they usually come and get pictures, and they take a story, they often take their own pictures of things because of getting permissions and stuff, so you never know, but that could be, and if we wanted to put something in there about Taste of the Holidays, we should have submitted it last week. I mean, we do, you know, or soon, so those are the things that, you know, it's too late when you open the magazine and, you know, it's got to be out soon, so I went to workshop on that, it was good. I'll share some of that with Julie. Yeah, and these are the areas, that was just the areas again that they were focusing on for worldwide service, and we talked about those. And the folio push, I put this on your table as well.
And then one of the Rotary actors I met at the conference was all jazzed up about saying, well, you know, we're really close to ending polio, and that's important, but what comes next? And Rotary's starting slowly to think about what's the next major push, and this particular Rotary actor was human trafficking, and there was actually a lot of sessions on human trafficking at the conference. I didn't go to those, but there were. So just, we're running out of time here. So there were two things that I didn't really know much about: Rotary action groups and Rotary fellowship. So there's more information on the website, but essentially these action groups they're organized around a particular focal area, and they're trying to do something positive, and they span the gamut from, you know, getting business involvement to environmental restoration and climate change to all sorts of health issues to, you name it, there's probably an action group. And so, and they're expanding, you know, it's not just the Rotarians getting together, but they're looking for partners and things like that, and they go out and they try to develop really high impact projects that they go do. So there's a lot out there. Looks like there's 25 active groups, and sounds like they have some small interviews to help support just the group. But they do a bunch of projects, and so this is something to look into. There's also fellowships, and these are for Rotarians, like our fellowship group, to get together and enjoy themselves and possibly have a social cause after, but it's more about the social engagement and the fellowship versus the action group, which is more about the project to get stuff done. And so there's a bunch of these. This is one of them. There's a Rotary Means Business Fellowship, so it's a community of business leaders and trying to, you know, connect the businesses. But there's other ones. There's the cycling group. There's the whiskey group. There's the wine group. There's the
Those don't
birding
go
group.
together, actually.
Yeah. There's a birding group. There's all kinds of groups.
There's a quilting group.
There's a quilting group.
Yeah.
There's a beer drinking group.
Yeah, there's a beer drinking group, and
Got right.
oops. And there's also a surfer group, and they're planning a big event in Honolulu 2020. Okay, so that's it.
So we can hold your presentation. We got 1 minute left. We'll just move on to the raffle if we have it. Just so y'all know, our speaker that was going to speak today had a family tragedy and had to cancel, so we kind of dropped today's meeting. John was gracious enough to offer to speak to you from anywhere from 5 to 25 minutes, but we had plenty of material, so it worked out perfectly. Absolutely. So raffle time.
Okay, that's me. So I'm going to have my wonderful, very attentive mentor.
Wake him up quick.
You better pick correct.
Okay. It is 694-6973.
That could also be yours. Is it?
Oh, is it yours?
No, that's okay.
Is it? Is that
It's okay, yeah.
I couldn't see it.
He didn't pick his own.
I'm pouring on the guilt here.
Well, maybe on
This
purpose.
is going to cost you, Mom.
Oh,
That's
funny.
There you go.
Oh, all right.
$5.
I have to pay you to get a meeting with you.
No, we're going to
There
do
you
it
are, big
this
winner. Woo-hoo. All right.
All right, shall I draw another one?
Yeah, why
I
not?
think you should. While we're at it.
You better not pick
Roll
your
here.
tickets again.
You got another one, Bob.
What are the odds? There.
All right.
They're very high.
favorite.
Okay,
citation.
694-6980.
What a disappointment.
Who is it?
No.
Tom.
6980.
Tom
Here.
K.
I got it.
All right, let's see.
$5.
Okay.
One quick thing I forgot is one of the Rotarians, or actually it was a Rotaractor that I met at lunch in Hamburg. They recently started a cool Rotaract club, and they gave us one of their club banners that I'm presenting on.
All right.
Where's that from? They had they're from Nigeria, and I asked him, well, what kind of events do you do? And he said, well, the first event that we put together was, Nigeria was having these elections, and they often have a lot of violence. They put together a peace event where they had the soccer game, where they invited the politicians, and they had Rotarians, and they actually had some of the Rotarian Peace Fellow people there, and they had the soccer game, and it was to promote get the vote out, but do it peacefully. And I thought that was pretty cool. And their next thing that they're looking to do is something with the schools and school kids. So I was going to pass his contact information out to the international committee and see if there's some connection we can make there.
And thank you for the club for helping paying our, whatever it's called to go. We really appreciate it.
Yes. All right, thanks.
You got it. And that wraps up our meeting for today. Next Friday, have fun this weekend. I'll do the thing, and yeah.